so much, everyone, for staying with us. Our first guest tonight, one of those who are aspiring to be Lagos State Governor, is the candidate of the NRM, Mr. NRMs Braithwaite. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Mr. Braithwaite, for joining us tonight, and it's good to see you again. Give us an understanding. There's an array of stars that are on display for who are willing to take up that challenge of leading Lagos State. I mean, Lagos State is not an easy state to govern, by all means, as the commercial hub of the nation. Why do you want to be Lagos governor?
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me on the program. I hope you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
You've said it all. I think Lagos is such a delicate state. It's a cosmopolitan society, and it definitely needs someone who has clearly got a human face and somebody who has a track record of having achieved in multiple dimensions. The problems that we have, the challenges, the gaps that we see, really, there is no room for experimentation. The stakes are too high. And it's a state that, we love dearly as a Lagosian. I do believe that there's so many heights that we still need to attain. And someone like me, with my track record, my history of achievement when I was working inside the big telecoms operators, I've had a real history of achievements, which I truly believe is what one needs to bring to bear. Yes, there are an array of those of us putting ourselves forward for the job, but like in any type of employment situation, before you hire someone, you must obviously look at what their cognate experience has been. So in terms of human capital, you need somebody who's going to be able to handle the diverse human capital complexity and ensure that people really are inspired to be able to deliver on all fronts that are required. In terms of financial capacity, you want somebody who really clearly has had financial stewardship, has handled large sums, large budgets, and is able to therefore translate that into the state. When I was in MTN telecoms, I sat the executive, I was a member of the executive that handled a budget at par with the size of the budget of Lagos State. So that's proven track record. You can go to bed, you can count on me definitely to be able to achieve and deliver across Nigeria. I was responsible for delivering services to over 53 million customers. And to be able to do that in a rugged terrain really determines and depends on someone having the capacity to be able to do so. So I'm not just talking about things that I would like to do, but definitely I have demonstrated that I've been able to be relied upon to deliver. And that's why I really need to come in and do the same for Lagos State.
Definitely, running a state as Lagos, which has an economy equivalent to 3 to 4 West African countries put together, has enormous potentials and opportunities, and it goes beyond someone who has only a track record in the private sector, but someone who also has some level of governance experience. Would you say you have this kind of, you've talked about your experience and your track record in the private sector, but what about the public sector experience, governance capacity? Do you have that? What can you tell Lagosians about your experience in terms of handling the state like Lagos, aside your private sector experience?
Well, Sharon, that's why we talk about cognate experience. Cognate experience means that you have things that match and can map to what is required. Lagos State is about administration. It's really about taking all the different sectors and being able to ensure that as the executive governor, you are able to inspire, direct, and urge and get people that will work and deliver for you on all fronts, on all the infrastructure projects. So when we talk about what is being done in a state, in a government, if you take my experience when I was the general manager Southwest Celtel, which is now Airtel. I was responsible for 6 states, which at that time had a population of about 22 million. And the essential task involved getting together the team that would be able to deliver and roll out the telecoms infrastructure, which, by the way, also included having to construct roads, access roads, which were not available. It involved having to put on utilities, electricity, sorting out the rural areas, the rural communities, corporate social responsibility, dealing with the local people, the obas, the ballers, that we got the buy-in and what to be able to helping was also people in those days. So that type of experience that you need, handling massive budgets, delivering on those budgets, delivering to time, and ensuring that people got essential services delivered, and making people happy. So to that extent, you carry that across into a state like Lagos. It's really about infrastructure rollout. It is about ensuring that the educational system is working. It's about ensuring that your civil service, you're giving them this.
Sorry, if I may take that question again. I was asking you that you are an outsider to the Nigerian mainstream politics, and you are of the NRM, not a very popular political party in a state like Lagos. They talk about political structure. Do you have, as a party and as a candidate, the wherewithal in terms of followership and the base to garner enough votes to be Lagos governor? How much of this conviction have you been able to convince the people of Lagos to vote for you on Saturday?
Thank you very much, Shem. And I must say that, it's very, very interesting what's happening in Nigeria of today, and especially in our lovely city, Lagos. I would describe us as going through a dispensation of enlightenment. I think that Nigerians today are now beginning to ask themselves that big why question. Why should we keep going the way we've been going all of this while? Why shouldn't we look for something different, for something fresh? And when you look at the data, which is what really convinced me to get into the ring, in 2019, only about 20% of the registered voters and those who have collected their PVCs actually went to vote. So you had about 80% of people deciding not to vote. And you have to ask the question, why? Why did people kind of sit back and decide that they were not going to pitch in? And when you ask the question, a lot of people tell you because they didn't really like the choice that was available, or all the choices that they had. So that's the first thing. The first trigger is that you have the undecided voters, and there's quite a significant number of them. Even as we speak, as at last week's election, we also saw that, the turnout was between 25, 30% turnout. So there's still a large number of people who are undecided, who are looking for that person, that individual, who they can really turn to and say, yes, we believe in this person and this individual. And it's not really essentially about the party, because if it was about party, there were a lot of heads that rolled in last week's election, which belonged to your established parties. It is now about the individual who is placing himself out there. And we don't have independent candidates. So we've got to go with what we have. And I really wanted to go on a fresh platform because I wanted to make it clear to people that really what I bring is a fresh mindset. So yes, there are people out there. Yes, I have been engaging with people who have said, wow, this is really, really wonderful that someone like you is getting involved. And you see, I would describe myself as a moderate, as a welfarist, as a people-centered individual. And I truly believe that Lagosians today are looking for that. There's too much polarization that is going on in the space today. There's so much fighting that's going on. I come in peace. I come with a fresh outlook. I come with that. The agenda is what I call the easy agenda.
It seems you've gone muted on your system, Mr. Braithwaite. If you can just unmute. But I'd like to take you to some of the things Lagosians will like to look out for in who will become the next governor. I don't know if you can hear me, Mr. Braithwaite. It does look like you.
Hello, Shane. I don't know what happened, but it looks like
your system went
mic got muted.
Yeah, but can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's because somebody's calling.
I think there was an interference, maybe a call coming through your system. But if you can hear me now, so I can push in the next question. Is that okay?
Sure.
Oh, fantastic.
I can hear you.
Yeah, good. Now, one fantastic thing about Lagos is the commercial viability of that city, or, well, if you say Lagos city, of the state. But give us an idea of the kind of Lagos in terms of the economy that you hope to build. And I'll give you a background to this. Lagos has the highest internally generated revenue in all of the 36 states of the Federation, but it also has the burden as a state with the highest debt profile amongst the subnationals in the country. Now, there are a lot of potentials, but the burden is also huge, and you have a lot of people moving into Lagos. And this is my question. In terms of the vision of the Lagos that you have, how much of the volume of revenue do you hope to get for Lagos?
Well, Shane, certainly with my kind of programs, there will be a need for us to borrow just a little bit more. Because at the end of the day, we are going to have to create jobs. One of the big problems that Lagos has today is unemployment. It is too high. We are at very, very critical levels of unemployment, which could tip us over into an uprising. And so our government would have to do a lot, like an emergency rollout plan, to make sure that we actually have public works and other programs that will start to feed employment opportunities out there. We've got to bring employment crashing down, as low as we can. So there might be a need to borrow just a little bit more to handle that, whilst we're still trying to sort out the wastage that might be in government. But if we spend so much time trying to deal with that, we won't be able to get on with the program. So to a large extent, I would look at the economy. I would split the economy of Lagos in terms of GDP by local government. And to that extent, would borrow really from the Chinese approach. What the Chinese did to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty was that they went right down to the local levels, and they began to stimulate cottage industries down at the local level. What you then do there is that begins to raise activity at those local levels. You begin to now raise the economy. You're boosting production at those local levels. And then that starts to, in its turn, feed back into the economy of the state. You cannot really boost the economy without doing this down at the bottom level. We are going to run a bottom-up approach to really ensure that you've got lots of talented people and then many sectors that we can really get cracking, local government by local government. To that extent, the local government will be competing with one another. You have places that can be aqua business related, where you can do fish and you can start cottage industries across the value chain. You have places like Ekpe where that can be done. You have places like Ikorodu where you can stimulate the crop, the agrarian aspect of the economy and really get that rolling. You've got places like Badagry where you can now stimulate for the tourism element that's there. You can really now start to see hospitality businesses, creeping up and so forth. So there's a lot that can really happen to unlock value out of the local government. And to that extent, that now gets everybody in the society moving. You talk about Lagos being the net receiver of migrants. I call them economic migrants. They're coming away from disaster areas or whatever. Now, some of them can be extremely useful to the agricultural plan that our administration will put in place. And by that, I mean that some of these folk that are migrating in are farmers themselves. They know how to farm. So by using their skills and creating farm settlements, we can have multiple food hubs that can be created all along both the west and the eastern corridor of Lagos, and to that extent, the northern corridor of the Ikorodu area. So there's a lot that can be done. You can look at people as if, oh, it's a terrible thing, to have all these people. Or you can look at them and say, okay, we can start to actually help them. And what China also did, which is very instructive, is that they created twin cities. The east coast of the country was doing quite well with all their manufacturing and whatever. And while the west coast was, lagging well behind, that was where the poverty was really acute. So what they did was that they created twin cities. The eastern ones created sort of like similar type of industries and whatever at a sort of cottage level. And then they began to help the west. And that's how they started to burgeon. And the whole country benefited as a result. So we would do the same. So all these migrants that are coming, we'd first deploy them and help them to help us stimulate, particularly our food industry. And then we would sort of like have a marriage and create some kind of a twin thing where the people who are there, we stop them from migrating downwards by really ensuring that things are being sent up there to help them and to stabilize them. So we can work, it could be a quid pro quo arrangement where we use human capital and we deploy human capital to advantage.
Let me take you to a familiar terrain. And since you mentioned the issues of jobs, there are a few places in Lagos that are now being liking, or they are trying to model after the Silicon Valley in the United States. There is a vibranium hub valley in Lagos. There is a long list of tech hubs like the African hub, the tech hub, and all of that in Lagos. But tech is one area that a lot of the young Nigerians, especially in Lagos, can thrive. The computer village in Nigeria, you take any of your gadgets there, you might find solutions to almost any kind of problems you are having with any of your devices. Do you have a specific agenda or vision in the area of tech or transforming Lagos into a larger tech hub, not only for Nigeria, but for Africa and the continent?
Yes, indeed. I do work in the tech space myself. I'm co-founder of a cloud telephony company. And to a large extent, tech is the way that we're going to go forward. I have a friend who actually runs a tech organization as well. This time, they focus more on artificial intelligence, somewhere in the Yaba axis. And what they've been able to do, amazing, is that they've been able to deploy tech to teach children. So during the COVID pandemic, what they did was that they brought out this wonderful feature using that simple phone. They call it the feature phone, not the Android phone, not the phone that has all these smartphone features. And they were able to roll out intelligent educational functionality to 8 million children across Nigeria during the pandemic. And the children were able to get into what they call self-paced learning. And to that extent, they were now able to sort of, really, really start rolling forward instead of just being left to their own devices. So the tech we will deploy in terms of education, in terms of jobs, the creation of jobs. Tech is the way, both in terms of ensuring that when I talked to you earlier about the local government. So imagine a local government understanding that really it's there to create jobs and to create business. What stops the local government chairman from calling, say, Amazon and saying, look, Amazon, we'd like you to bring a warehouse. We're going to give you land and whatever and all that. Bring your warehouse over here and let's start rolling forward. Microsoft, another company, is having a data center and stuff here. And what we tell Mark Zuckerberg has been to Lagos, he's been to Yaba Hub. And what we need to do is just encourage all these folks that, look, Lagos is where it's at. Bring your establishments. I know some time ago, the Twitter guy wanted to come to Lagos. You know, he wasn't able to do that. We would encourage all of these tech giants.
But what magnitude of job, or do you have any specific, for example, Computer Village, do you have any vision in turning it around for a better management, for effectiveness, for in fact a good commerce orientation around that corridor?
Yes, so typically what we would encourage is not just assembling things, right? But I don't see why a Computer Village cannot really turn into, well, the space is too small anyway. So my design would be to encourage them. There's this chap who used to work for Andela, and then I think he's one of the founders of Photo. There's some land towards the Ekpe axis that they're trying to actually build and convert into like a tech city. That's the kind of thing that I would want to encourage the Computer Village folk to try to move into their own tech city. And in that tech city, we would encourage manufacturing, you know, to go on, because it is also the case that a lot of raw material and all that goes into these things can also be found in Nigeria. So there's no reason why we should just kind of let the Chinese keep sort of coming to excavate this stuff out. And then we're buying all these things, the finished products, at very, very expensive pricing. So we would want to encourage the Computer Village folk. And you guys, as you alluded to, are doing extremely well. You know this thing back to front. Let's now start with South Korea, for goodness sake. Used to just be the place where they were just bringing things together for Apple. Until suddenly they said, look, listen, we understand this thing. We know how it works. And then they created their own phone. We can do the same. Nigeria has become the dumping place for a lot of these mobile telephony and computers and all that. Why can't we start manufacturing? I think we have Xerox that's done something. We can have so many more of these things. And I think that by enabling and by encouraging, this is going to really help to boost the employment, and consequently, it will boost the revenue.
All right, let me take you to one area that bothers some people in Lagos, and that is the traffic congestion on most of the major roads in Lagos, the issue of transportation and all of that. There was a 2018 report which says an average of 30 hours is what people spend in traffic in Lagos. In fact, there was another report that says 75% of weekly working hours are spent in traffic in Lagos. In the first 1 year, for example, how do you hope to turn around these very unhealthy situation for Lagosians around, and what is your estimate of fixing this problem?
Yeah, sure. You know, Mahmoud, the ruler of Dubai, said that the purpose of government is to make people happy. And to a large extent, he then has told his people, you must always have at the back of your mind, will this make the people happy? So my government would be with a bold human face about making people happy. So in the short term, very, very short term, I would appeal to Lagosians to allow us to try something that has been used before. Because in the first 3 months, in my view, we have to be able to bring this thing to some level of manageability. And to that extent, I would like the people of Lagos to let us try the odd and even process. temporarily. To that extent, I estimate that we'll be able to get 20-30% of vehicles off the road every day. So how that would work is that you have vehicles that will come out on the even days, and the vehicles that have odd number plates won't be able to come out on the even days. And then on the other days, you then have the vehicles with the odd numbers coming out. That way, it will take off quite a number of vehicles off the streets for an appreciable period of time. It will free the traffic whilst we, the government, begin to really steady ourselves and try to get our medium to long-term plans in place. Now, in addition to that, we would, of course, have to have sizable public transport that would be able to now convey people, from wherever. We would then encourage people also to do ride sharing. Ride with your neighbor. Because sometimes you're going on the road in the traffic and you see that it's just one person in a vehicle that can contain 5 people. So if we can at least encourage people to ride share, that would be, I think, a fantastic thing in the short term. A second short-term measure would be that we will call on companies that really recruit, that have high numbers of staff. And we will say to those companies, for example, a company has 500 people moving from mainland to island, every day. We will say to those companies to please assist government by bringing in place what I would call flexi time. Now, flexi time means that not everybody is leaving one location, i.e. the mainland, and trying to get to work at 8 a.m. in the morning. So if we can start that, and companies can allow their staff, so some will come for the 8 a.m. and then others may come in at 10 a.m. That way too, we have staggered the movement and ensured that not everybody's, belting down the highway at the same time, and the bottleneck that creates. A third element, now this starts to move into the medium, would be to get companies also to get involved, and government too will get involved in providing hubs that are mainland island hubs, so that people who work for certain companies that are, across the water will be able to go to these hubs and still be able to work and produce. Now, once all that is going on, parallel to that will be the waterways, which is again a very, very fast way of deploying mass transit without trying to construct things and whatever. I remember years ago, where you had all these big ferries, that were plying the waters of Lagos. So we'll bring ferries and really, really have these ferries, large ferries that can contain, double-decker ferries that can really contain people. And in areas where the ferries may not be able to navigate, we'll bring in the hovercrafts that will do kind of like the last line. So I think with that, we should be able to, in that sort of 18-month period, Lagos will start to breathe, far easier, whilst we're then getting on with the rest of the stuff, with the infrastructure, the road build, the road repairs, bringing in the buses, and of course, the rail transport. In the rail plan, there was in the master plan for the railway, there were 6 lines that were meant to have been put into play. And those 6 lines were meant to be conveying people, about 35 million transitors per month. Unfortunately, that plan isn't yet in place. So that will also be part of the rollout.
Mr. Braithwaite, going into this election, something is very critical. You're not the only one in the race. This is a competition, and definitely there is one person that will win in the end. But the big question is whether or not you have what it takes to win this election. Should you not win this election, what would you do on one hand? And would you be willing to work with whoever wins this election?
If I don't win, I'll say, Father, why, God? Why didn't I win? Yes, I think that, no doubt, there has to be one person to emerge. I hope that that person, for those who have not decided, would definitely be Akin Braithwaite for the reasons that I have adduced. Now, if it so happens that Akin Braithwaite is not the person who will sit on that seat, I would be extremely happy, it would be the term that I would use, to try to help whoever, to ensure that really the people-centered, because I looked at people's manifestos, and really at the end of the day, I really believe that priority has to be given to the people issue, So that really would be my clarion call. And that would be, yes, something that I'm not one of those people that feels that if it's not me, then, the high road. No. I've always been a team player. And that's one thing that the corporate world does for you. It makes you and moves you into a team because you deliver based on teamwork.
Akin Braithwaite is the governorship candidate of the NRM. Thank you so much, and I wish you the very best in the election of Saturday. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Good night, everyone.